My wife cheated with my best friend, secretly sold our family home for $350, $0, and now she's denying everything in court. I just found out she's been laundering the money through her new boyfriend's company. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. It all started with a gut feeling that something was off, but I didn't want to believe it. My wife, Lisa, had always been a bit bitchy, but she could also be charming when she wanted something. We'd been together for nearly 10 years, married for 8, and I thought I knew her pretty well. Little signs, though, started creeping in. She'd be secretive with her phone, brushing off questions, and sometimes she'd get defensive when I'd try to look at her messages. Nothing concrete, just enough to make me suspicious. Then, about 2 months ago, I noticed she was acting different. She'd leave the house suddenly, claiming errands or work trips, but I'd catch her sneaking out late at night or coming back with a weird glow in her eyes. She'd tell me she was working late, but her phone would ring at odd hours, and she'd hide it quick. I'd ask her about it and she'd roll her eyes, call me paranoid, and say I was imagining things. That's typical Lisa. She's good at lying, especially when she knows she's caught in a lie. One day, I decided to do some digging. I checked her phone when she went to the store and I found texts from her and her best friend, Jenny, talking about plans and keeping things secret. Nothing explicit at first, but enough to set off alarms. Then I noticed some bank statements in her email that I hadn't seen before. I'm not a financial genius, but I could see large, suspicious deposits, $50, $70, sometimes $100,000, coming in from accounts I didn't recognize. I didn't understand what it was at first, but it didn't sit right. That's when I stumbled upon a message thread on her laptop which she forgot to clear. It was with a guy named Mark, who I later found out was her new boyfriend. They'd been talking about the deal, the house, and the money like it was some kind secret business venture. My stomach sank. I looked closer and realized she'd sold our family home, our house where we'd built memories, where our kids grew up, for $350, $0. She'd kept it hidden from me completely. The sale had gone through a while ago and she'd been laundering that money through Mark's company. I was stunned. Betrayed doesn't even begin to cover it. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this? How could she sell our home, our life savings, and lie about it? And then I found out about her affair with Mark. She'd been sneaking around with him for months, probably since before the sale. All those late nights, secret meetings, and the way she'd get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts, they all clicked into place now. She'd been lying to my face the entire time. I felt sick. I confronted her that night. I wasn't going to wait anymore. I told her I knew everything, the affair, the sale, the money laundering, everything. Her face went pale and she started denying everything, calling me crazy, saying I must be mistaken. Typical Lisa, she's a master manipulator. She said she loved me, that it was just sex with Mark, and that the house sale was just a business deal she was doing on her own. She even accused me of spying on her, trying to ruin her life, but I had the evidence. I had the bank statements, the messages, the emails. There was no denying it anymore. The emotional hit hard. I felt anger, betrayal, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. I trusted her with everything, my heart, our future, our family, and she'd thrown it all away for some guy and a quick buck. I kept thinking about the house, the memories, the kids' childhood. All gone, sold off behind my back. I couldn't sleep that night, replaying everything, trying to understand how she could be so cold, so calculating. I didn't know what to do at first, just sit there and feel the weight of it all. It's a crushing feeling, realizing the person you loved and trusted has been secretly stabbing you in the back for months. But I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. I had to decide what to do next. I was furious, but I also felt betrayed and deeply hurt. The trust was broken beyond repair. That's when I started planning my next move. I didn't want her to get away with it, not without consequences. I started talking to a lawyer, gathering evidence, and thinking about how to fight for what's mine, what's left of it. I was determined to get to the bottom of this, to make her face her lies and face the fallout. Because this wasn't just about money or the house. It was about respect, honesty, and the life we built. And she had destroyed all of that in a matter of months. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. her smug, bitchy smile when she everything, her eyes darting around like she was hiding something. I felt this mix of rage and heartbreak that I couldn't shake. I kept asking myself how she could do this to me, to us, to the family we'd built. She lied, she cheated, and she sold our home like it was nothing. And all the while she was out there with her new boyfriend Mark, laundering the money through his company. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. The next day I decided I needed to get some clarity. I went to see a lawyer. I explained everything about the sale, the money, the affair, and I showed her the evidence I had gathered. She looked over the bank statements, the messages, the emails, and her expression darkened. She told me I had a strong case, especially since Lisa had been laundering money through Mark's company. That was pretty serious, and it could turn into a criminal investigation if I pushed it hard enough. But I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to just blow everything up without a plan. While I was dealing with the legal side, I started thinking about how to confront Lisa again. I couldn't just let her keep lying, especially when she was so brazen about it. I decided I'd need to catch her in the act if I wanted any proof that would hold up in court. I set up a few hidden cameras in the house, nothing invasive, just enough to catch her if she ever met Mark again or made any moves to hide more money. I also hired a private investigator to follow her around. I needed to know if she was still sneaking out, still meeting Mark, or if she'd hidden anything else from me. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She was bitchy and dismissive, throwing tantrums when I brought up the house or her lies. She insisted she was innocent, that I was just paranoid, that I was trying to ruin her. She even called me controlling, said I didn't trust her, like I was the one at fault. It was all so typical. She'd lie, then lie some more, then turn it around on me. But I saw through her now. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with everything. One day, I found out she was still talking to Mark. The messages I uncovered from the hidden camera footage confirmed it. They'd been planning their next move, probably to split the money or hide it better. I felt sick. How could she be so cold? She was out there cheating on me, selling our house, laundering money, and playing some kind of game. And I was just supposed to sit here and take it. No way. I decided I'd fight back, not just for the money or the house, but for my dignity. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I started preparing for the court case, gathering every piece of evidence I had. I knew she'd try to deny everything, spin lies, and make herself look innocent, but I had the truth. I had the proof that she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing. I also found out she'd been telling her friends she was free, that she was tired of being married, and that she was going to start fresh with Mark. That hurt more than anything. She was basically telling everyone she was done with me, and I was just some obstacle she had to get rid of. The emotional toll was immense. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. I kept asking myself how I'd let things get this far, how I'd missed all the signs. But I knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her win, not after everything she'd done. I was determined to get justice, even if it meant losing her completely. I started to accept that my marriage was over, that I'd been betrayed beyond what I thought was possible. And as much as it hurt, I knew I had to move on, rebuild my life, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was to trust her so blindly. She's a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with everything. But I've learned my lesson. Trust is earned, not given freely. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. I'm still hurt, still angry, but I'm also determined. This isn't the end of my story. I've got a lot to do, a lot to fix. And I won't rest until I get some kind of justice and make sure she can't do this to anyone else. After I'd gathered enough evidence to blow the lid off everything, I realized I had to be strategic. Lisa was not the kind of person who'd go down without a fight. She was bitchy, manipulative, and she'd been playing the victim for months. I knew she'd spin this around and try to make me look like the bad guy. So I stayed calm, kept my cards close to my chest, and kept pushing forward with the legal process. One thing I didn't mention before, she kept lying, even when I had proof. She'd sit there, deny everything, and then turn around and call me paranoid or jealous. She'd say she was just having sex with Mark, that the sales of the house were all just part of a business deal, and that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I'd seen the messages, the bank deposits, the secret meetings. It was all right there in black and white. The more she lied, the angrier I got, but I kept my cool. I couldn't let her see me breaking down. I decided I needed to confront her again, face to face, but this time with the evidence in hand. I arranged for us to meet at a neutral place, her favorite coffee shop. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I had everything to prove her lies. When she arrived, she looked annoyed, like I was the one bothering her. I didn't waste time. I laid out everything, screenshots of her texts, the bank statements, the proof of the sale, and I watched her reaction carefully. She went silent for a moment, then started to get defensive. "You're making this all up," she said, her voice dripping with false innocence. "You're just jealous because I'm finally free. You're insecure and you're trying to control me." I couldn't believe her. She was so good at spinning stories that even I started questioning myself for a second, but I held firm. I told her I wasn't crazy, that I had proof, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She started to cry fake tears, then flipped the switch and accused me of being abusive, controlling, and paranoid. She claimed I'd been stalking her, that I was trying to ruin her reputation. It was all part of her manipulation tactics. I just stared at her, feeling a mixture of disgust and pity. She was so good at lying that she convinced some people, but I knew better. I knew she was a liar, a cheater, and a thief. The emotional toll of all this was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and sick to my stomach. I kept replaying everything in my mind. How she sold our house behind my back, how she'd been sneaking around with Mark for months, and how she'd lied to everyone, even her friends. I didn't know how I'd let this happen, how I'd missed all the signs. But now I was done. I was done trusting her, done being naive. I realized that if I didn't do something, she'd keep lying, keep cheating, and keep stealing from us. That day, I made a decision. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, our house, our savings, and my dignity. I hired a top-notch lawyer who specialized in financial crimes and divorce cases. I wanted to make sure she paid for her lies and her betrayal. I also started planning how I'd tell the kids. It wasn't going to be easy, but they deserved to know the truth. I didn't want her to keep pulling the wool over their eyes. As I prepared for the legal battle ahead, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief mixed with anger. I was finally taking control of the situation. No more lies, no more secrets. I was going to get justice, even if it meant tearing everything apart. Because at the end of the day, I realized that someone like Lisa, who could sell her own family home, cheat on her husband, and launder money, was not someone I could trust anymore. And I'd be damned if I let her get away with it. I owed it to myself and to the life we once had to fight back and make her face the consequences of her actions. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, surveillance, and emotional exhaustion. I was relentless. I poured every ounce of energy into building a case that would expose her lies and hold her accountable. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman I thought I knew, but beneath that surface was someone entirely different, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. Lisa kept up her act, though. She was bitchy and dismissive, constantly throwing tantrums when I pressed her about the house, the money, or her affair with Mark. She'd call me paranoid, say I was trying to control her, and accuse me of inventing things. But I had the proof. I had the bank deposits, the texts, the emails, and the hidden cameras. I knew she was still sneaking around, still trying to hide her tracks. The more she lied, the more determined I became to bring her down. One day I caught her again, this time red-handed. I had set up a meeting with the investigator to follow her to one of her errands. Turns out she was meeting Mark at a hotel. I watched her walk in, her bitchy smirk in place like she thought she was untouchable. I felt my blood boil. That was the last straw. I had everything I needed now. I snapped some photos, saved the messages, and knew I had her dead to rights. That night I confronted her again, this time with all the evidence laid out on the table. I told her I knew about her meetings, her lies, her money laundering. Her face twisted into a sneer. She tried to deny everything, but I just shook my head. "You're not getting away with this," I said. "You've been lying, cheating, and stealing from us for months. The house, the money, you're going to have to answer for all of it." She looked furious, then started crying fake tears again, trying to manipulate the situation. But I was beyond caring. I'd seen through her act. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She accused me of trying to control her, said I was abusive, and claimed she was just trying to survive. She even said she'd been forced into the affair and that Mark was just her escape. I didn't buy it. I knew she was lying, just like always. I could see through her bullshit now. She was a master at spinning stories, but her lies couldn't hide the truth anymore. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt a mix of disgust and heartbreak. I trusted her with everything, my life, our family, our future, and she'd thrown it all away. I kept thinking about the house, the memories, the kids' childhoods. All of it was tainted now, stained by her lies and betrayal. But I also knew I couldn't let her keep pulling the strings. I had to act fast before she destroyed everything completely. I finalized the legal paperwork, filed for divorce, and made sure the court knew about her financial crimes. The lawyer told me I had a solid case, especially with the evidence of money laundering and the sale of the house. I was determined to get what was fair, what I deserved. I also started talking to the kids, preparing them for the inevitable. They deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. I didn't want her to keep manipulating them or hiding her lies. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to gaslight me, calling me controlling, paranoid and jealous. She insisted she loved me, that she'd never cheat, that the sale of the house was just a business mistake. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying to everyone, even her friends, trying to cover her tracks. She was so good at lying that she convinced some people she was the victim. But I saw through her now. I saw her for what she was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted. The day of the court hearing came fast. I was nervous but also relieved. Finally, I was going to get some answers, some justice. I presented all the evidence, proof of the sale, the bank deposits, the messages, and watched her squirm under the weight of it. She tried to deny everything, but it was too late. The judge saw through her lies, and I knew I had a good chance of winning this battle. As I left the courthouse that day, I felt a strange sense of closure. I'd fought hard and I'd won some small victories, but I also knew this wasn't the end. There'd be more fallout, more pain, more rebuilding. Still, I was ready. I'd learned a lot about trust, about betrayal, about the importance of protecting myself. Lisa's betrayal had shattered my world, but it also taught me that I had to stand up for myself. I had to fight for what's right, even when it feels impossible. And most importantly, I had to move on, rebuild, and make sure I never let someone like her hurt me again. The aftermath of the court hearing was a whirlwind. Lisa's face was a mask of fury and desperation, but I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I could breathe a little easier knowing that the truth was out in the open and that the court recognized her deceit. Still, the emotional scars ran deep. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, of having been played like a fool for so long. In the days that followed, I focused on the legal process of dividing everything up. The judge ordered her to return the proceeds from the house sale, which she claimed was just a business transaction. But I had the proof that she'd been laundering money through Mark's company. That was a blow to her, and she tried to spin it in court, but her lies fell flat. The court also ordered her to pay back the money she'd taken, which felt like some small victory. But honestly, I didn't care much about the money anymore. It was the principle, that she thought she could get away with everything, that hurt the most. I started to move out of the house, finally packing up my things. It was a strange feeling walking through the empty rooms that once held so many memories. I kept thinking about the kids, wondering how they'd take all this. I sat them down separately, told them the truth as honestly as I could, and promised I'd do everything to protect them from her manipulations. They were hurt, confused, and angry too, but I saw a flicker of hope in their eyes, hope that things could get better, that justice was possible. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to spin her story. She claimed she was innocent, that I was just jealous and controlling, and that she'd been forced into the affair. She even had the nerve to say that I was the one who was really cheating on her, on the family, on the marriage. But I knew better. I had the evidence, and I knew her well enough to see through her lies. She was furious, lashing out at everyone around her, trying to salvage her reputation. But the truth was out and she couldn't undo it. I also started to reflect on what I'd learned from all this. Trust is fragile, I realized. It takes years to build, but only moments to destroy. And when someone is manipulative and selfish, you have to be prepared for the worst. I'd been naive, blinded by love and loyalty, but now I saw her for who she really was, a woman willing to sell out her own family for money and a new boyfriend. That realization hit hard, but it also made me stronger. I promised myself I wouldn't let her do this to me, or anyone else, again. In the quiet moments, I thought about revenge. Not in a violent way, but in the sense of reclaiming my dignity and making sure she paid for her treachery. I wanted her to understand that actions have consequences. That's why I pushed for the court to order her to pay back what she stole and to face the legal repercussions of her money laundering. I wanted her to see that she couldn't just lie and cheat her way out of this, that her actions would catch up with her. The hardest part was facing the emotional fallout. I'd loved her once, believed in us, and now I had to rebuild from the rubble of her betrayal. It was a long, lonely journey, but I was determined to come out stronger. I started seeing a counselor, talking through everything, trying to process the pain. I realized I'd been holding onto hope for too long, hoping she'd change. But now I knew that some people just aren't capable of honesty or loyalty. I also learned that I needed to focus on myself and my children. Their well-being was more important than her manipulative games. I promised to be there for them, to give them stability and love, no matter what. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I'd survived her betrayal, and I'd come out the other side with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. Looking back, I see how much I've grown. I see the mistakes I made, trusting too easily, ignoring the signs. But I also see the strength I've gained from fighting back. I want anyone reading this who might be going through something similar to know you're not alone. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Because sometimes the only way to find peace is to confront the truth head-on and take control of your life again. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me, probably forever. I used to think love meant trusting blindly, but now I know better. Trust has to be earned, and when someone shows you their true colors, especially a person you thought you knew, it's a brutal lesson. Lisa's betrayal shattered my world, but it also forced me to face the truth about myself and what I deserve. I won't lie. There are still nights when the pain comes back, when I replay the betrayal and wonder how I missed all the signs. But I've also learned to accept that some things are beyond my control. What I can control is how I move forward. I've started rebuilding my life, piece by piece, focusing on my kids, my health, and my future. I've cut out the toxic people, including Lisa's manipulative lies, and I surround myself with those who truly care. The legal battles are over, and I've managed to get justice for the money she stole and the lies she told. But more than that, I've learned the importance of standing up for myself, of never letting anyone manipulate me again. If there's one thing I want anyone in a similar situation to take away, it's this: don't stay silent. Gather your evidence, get professional help if needed, and fight for what's right. Looking back, I see how naive I was to believe that love meant trusting blindly. I see now that honesty and loyalty are the foundations of any real relationship. Without them, everything crumbles. Lisa's greed, her lies, her manipulations, they all prove to me that some people are just not worth the pain. But I also see that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived her betrayal, and I've come out the other side determined to rebuild and move on. Most importantly, I've learned to forgive myself. Forgive myself for trusting too much, for not noticing the warning signs sooner, for not protecting myself. That forgiveness has freed me from the anger that once consumed me. Now I focus on healing, on creating a new life where honesty and integrity matter more than ever. So, to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, know that you're not alone. It's okay to feel broken, to feel betrayed, but don't let it define you. You have the strength to pick up the pieces, to stand tall, and to rebuild. Trust is fragile, but it can also be restored, first in yourself and then in others. This experience has been brutal, yes, but it's also been a lesson in resilience. I've learned that sometimes You have to lose everything to find out what truly matters. And what matters most is your peace, your integrity, and your ability to love yourself enough to walk away when someone doesn't deserve your trust. I've done that now. I've closed that chapter, and I'm finally ready to start a new one built on honesty, strength, and the hope that I'll never let someone betray me like that again.